with the new Marvel's Rival update coming July 23rd. I'm sure you're all wondering what you want to do with your Punisher builds. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and I'm here to clear it up. My name is DJ Red Dad, and I'm the #1 Punisher in Blood Hunt for the majority of this time that this game mode's been going. I've also hit rank 1 in quads and multiple ranks throughout the Blood Hunt event. And today we're just going to kind of go over the main things between what is the new info that's going to be released with the new patch and kind of how to build your Punishers, because there is quite a bit of different variations that we're going to be able to do. And as long as you know what stat kind of does what, you'll be able to build properly after that. A little editor's note, there will be timestamps in the description below, so if you want to go and skip between the video or you just want to recall certain parts of it, feel free to drop down there and kind of pick and choose the info that you need. But with that, we'll go ahead and start moving on to the video. The first thing that we're going to be touching upon is what's going to be releasing in the Marvel's Rivals patch. So starting tomorrow, July 23rd at 9 UTC, there's going to be a bit of things that's going to be kind of going on here, you know, mainly new skins, new maps, stuff like that. But the main thing that we're going to be touching on is the Blood Hunt portion. So here, the vampire threat continues. We bring upgrades to your arsenal to help survive the night. Gear enhancement. Push your power to the limit. You can now enhance your existing gear to unlock even a higher stat bonus. So a lot of the god roll items that you all have, it may just be low in the stat points, but you got all the, you know, the things that you need. This will be able to enhance it to be able to bump those numbers up to even just get, you know, higher damage numbers essentially. With gear refining, perfect your loadout. You can now reroll specific stats on your gear to perfectly synergize with the custom hero builds. So with this, just as it's saying, say that you have the one stat missing, but everything else is just god roll essentially. You switch that, you know, pump the numbers up, and then bam. And with Blood Hunt, you know, up until this point, we've just relied with a lot of RNG. Just the amount of forging that a lot of us have done is just astronomical, and that's just been the main thing holding us back. But with at least these 2 points here, the gear enhancement and the gear refining, we're going to be able to push the limits of the builds that we've already, you know, theory crafted. We just needed the rolls to kind of get. And that'll be the biggest things kind of going forward with this patch. And to touch upon this with the existing punny info, we'll be planning out what we need to do to kind of reach the new level of the 300, which we'll be kind of touching up here shortly. But the new drop 2 of Insight, enemies will now drop this rare item during combat. Use it to grant an instant burst of EX, which I'm assuming is just experience, to any hero of your choice, which is just going to help get you all up to the level 60 so you can start running those Punisher builds as soon as possible. Nightmare difficulty expanded, which is the big thing right here. The true test of a hero. The Nightmare difficulty cap has been pushed to floor 300. So we started off at 120 to 160 to 200. So now this massive leap of 300. And with the gear enhancement, the gear refining, that's going to be essential to be able to push to this floor 300. And as a special bounty, clearing floor 260 with any hero will reward you with 100 units, which, you know, it's kind of whatever at the end of the day for that. But the biggest things, gear enhancement, gear refining, and Nightmare difficulty expanded to 300. And with this, the double XP will be extended to October 5th, so just as long as the event as well, with Blood Hunt being extended to October 9th. So you can see that the, you know, higher ups of Marvels, they're listening, they're reading our input, and they're adding more to this, and I'm really excited to be pushing the floor 300s. But with, you know, the patch notes here, we'll be kind of touching up what we need to be able to reach those points. All right, so for the new people coming in that, you know, you're hearing about the patch and you're kind of going, well, I haven't really played Blood Hunt because I didn't really think it was going to be, you know, extended for that long. but now you're seeing this update and you're thinking about trying it. Well, we'll kind of dive into the beginnings of the blood hunt. So it was about back in April that Blood Hunt was originally released, and with that, it's just kind of a mode that you run around and kill waves of enemies up until wave 5 to where you fight a boss. Now to start, you would normally go through your levels here. You'd start through normal, go up to hard, extreme, and then you eventually get to your nightmare levels. With the new or the current cap right now, we're up to nightmare 200. And for the bosses that you can kind of encounter, you have, Cap Wolf, you have Rat, you have Dracula, then you have Kingpin. And for the waves, essentially, you have waves 1 through 4 that you'll kind of have your mob phase, essentially, with a couple elites that spawn out in between. And then you'll have your boss fight or your boss wave at wave 5. And you'll have 2 different styles of map. You have either survival, which will be time based, or you have a defeat all, which is just kill all the enemies that are on the map. And you'll also have different variations of maps as well too. You'll have the green field, you'll have train station, the L shape or tunnels, city, and graveyard. And there's another one that we don't really talk about that you don't really run at the higher levels, but I don't know what we really call it, but we'll touch upon one when we get there. But that's kind of the main thing that we're going with the blood hunt. And with that, we can kind of, now that we've kind of understand the basics of blood hunt, now we can kind of go into the next section here. Now that we've gone over the basics for blood hunt, we can kind of touch upon the characters with heroes that you can play in the game mode. The first 4 that we'll start here is Blade, Moon Knight, Squirrel Girl, and Punisher. With the meta always changing, things fall in, fall out of meta, and it's hard to kind of predict where the game mode will kind of, progress down the line. But at least with current meta, we'll kind of at least go over the roles. Blade, for most instances, is going to be your boss killer. For Moon Knight, he'll be kind of doing more mob clear. Squirrel Girl, you can kind of do a little bit of mob clear, but generally she's used as a vulnerability and tank role. And Punisher is also another viable boss killer. With the other ones that we can use, which will be Thor here, which will be pretty much with meta right now is the best mob clear. And then we have our last one, which is Jeff. And Jeff used to be a boss killer, I think, at one point for 2 days until he got shadow nerfed, but we don't really talk about Jeff anymore. But those will be the 4 or I guess 6 heroes that you can kind of pick from. But really on the top end levels, the most common comps that I've seen is you're going to have 1 Thor if they've got, max everything. It can change depending on how Nightmare 300 is going to be, but either a 1 Thor or 2 Thor variation to start. And then you always have a Vuln girl or a Vuln and tank Squirrel Girl. And then with some type of boss killer or 2, depending on the comp that you run. And that can either be Blade or Punisher and whatever type of variation that you want. You can run Punisher Blade, double Punisher, double Blade. It just kind of run whatever at least for the 200 rank 1 attempts that I've done previously. With Nightmare 300, we'll see how the meta changes, but that's typically what we're kind of dealing with right now. So if you want the best mob clear, go Thor. If you want to play support, go Squirrel Girl. If you want to do boss damage, then you go Blade or Punny. Now that we've gone over the patch notes and explained what Blood Hunt is and kind of the heroes that you kind of expect to play, in this guide we're going to be focusing just solely on Punisher. For mod experience, I've got over 250 hours, probably coming up on 300 at this point. And with Punny and the stats here, we'll kind of explain my thought process and everything, and kind of go into the nitty gritty and just kind of go over what I'm kind of thinking about when I'm going through this build. So the first thing that we got is total damage bonus. Depending on what you want to do for your Punisher, it will kind of depend on how you build your Punisher. If you're going to go solo, you're going to add more total damage. If you're just going to go, say, quads and you want to specialize, say, in just boss killing, then you'll spec more into output. But generally to explain it, total damage is just going to be an overall damage increase to your mobs and to your elite damage, with damage increase to your boss as well. Whereas total output, with testing that we've been kind of seeing, total output will deal more damage to boss, and total output will do more damage to boss, while total damage will do more damage to, say, mob and elites. So if you're trying to do, say, solo runs, you want to have more total damage. If you want to, say, spec or specialize into quads, then you'll spec more into output, or maybe even just fully output. With variations that I've done for solo, the values could potentially change when we get up to the Nightmare 300 levels. So we'll be kind of just talking about mostly what to kind of look out for when you're building, but we can kind of go over rough numbers at the Nightmare 200 level to see if they do transfer over. So on the solo Punisher side, I do want to at least try to aim for about the 600 ballpark for total damage. And to reach that, we want to be able to get an S rank on our total damage, along with our traits here reaching 5 points out of 5 for the total damage side. That'll get us up to 600, and that feels like about the sweet spot, or the bare minimum that you want to have. The more the better. But that's kind of like the bare minimum to at least be able to have good times on Nightmare 200s to kind of start when we start reaching for the 300s. For total output, I try to reach for about the 700 level for the solo Punisher side. If I'm going specifically just for boss killing on Nightmare 200, then the current build that I have right now, it has only output, but that's mainly with the RNG drops that I've currently got. With testing, it does feel like you do get more, at least boss damage, if you do spec more into total output. And then you have the Vone from Squirrel, a max Vone Squirrel of like 696%, with the ground Vone of 45% from Squirrel. That seems to be the best combo that I found for Punisher to be able to reach the rank 1 times on quads and for the solo Punisher side. But that's specifically for boss killing. But if we're kind of going back on the solo Punisher side, you want to aim for about 600%, Nightmare 200, and then 700% for the total output. And that feels to be about the sweet spot to where you can kill mobs quickly enough, but then you still have enough punch for the boss levels later. For current variations of Punisher, you can run close range, you cannot run close range. It's kind of a preference. But what it normally comes down to is you need a little bit extra punch for the wave clear, and you need to be able to make sure that you have enough boss clear at the end of the day. So however you achieve that just depends on the gear drops that you have, essentially. One way to run it is to do this variation of having close range damage. That way you have damage for your mobs, your elites, and your boss. And it's not, the real limiting factor is you have to be super close to be able to do the damage. But if you're running solo runs, the mobs are chasing you anyway, so you're gonna be able to capitalize that on, almost most of the time for your solo runs. And then for, quads, for Punisher boss, you, at least with the build, going up to Nightmare 300, when we start adding total damage to the boss variation, because we'll be able to pick our stats at that point. The general build that Punisher you should try to aim for is at least enough to be able to deal with the elites, that way Thor doesn't get swarmed, and then have enough boss damage to be able to melt the boss as quick as possible. And that's generally the way that you want to build it. So at least for what I have currently on my quad setup, this is currently my solo Punisher setup right here, but on my quad punny setup, I have only 50% in total damage, I think around 900 or something on the output, and I have the close range variant with my amulet here to be able to do enough damage from the missing total damage, essentially. But if you want to run, say, on your solo punny side, you can run either, say, close range variant, or a new way that we've been doing is having double high energy, and that will really speed up the mob clear time to really quick times. For an example, I would normally pull sometimes a low 50, more average on like 55 second on the first wave. And with a double explosion or a double high energy build, you can push that time down to say like 45 seconds, 40 seconds. Or an example on like the end of wave 4 clear for Nightmare 200, we can get up to times of say, well, about like 354 minutes on say like a regular variation of like say close range. But if you do the double high energy, you could push that down to say 320 wave 4 clear time on Nightmare 200. But the problem is you want to make sure that you have enough boss damage to be able to deal with that if you do run a double high energy variation. The one that I've only been able to test is a double high energy with no crit, or what is it called, chain fire, and the only amount that I have is the 3 points on the trait tree here. And I've been able to make it work for at least like rank 2, rank 3 times on the Nightmare 200, but I haven't been able to fully test it with a chain fire. But at least on early testing and with some of the other Punishers that I've ran the info across, they've done their testing with, it does feel like a viable build, at least on the solo side, if you want to do the double high energy for quicker mob clear. But what I like generally doing is just running the close range, because it's just kind of a catch-all. You can use it for farming, you can use it for quads, you can use it for solo, and it just feels like sure, you're really limited on the range. I think it's only 3 meters that we really get for the close range, so you really have to be close on your enemies. But the damage that we get is, you really shouldn't write it off, so that's why I've been running it. And with the new leaderboard times, we can see the potential that I've already reached 428 with these times, and that's not even the maximum time that I can get with this build. So you can kind of see the potential with that. And then with your boss damage, the bare minimum that you want is at least 1 stack of boss damage. If you can, 2 stacks. Just with the punny build setup, you're most likely going to be running like a boss variant in quads, or if you do, farming with people, that you're going to want your boss damage at the end of the day. So aim for 1 stack. Normally you can get it on say like your slug here and your amulet and maybe your gun, just depending on how your rolls end up. But then at the end of the day, 1 stack, 2 if you can. And then for your healthy enemies, as we can see here, it only works up to 80%. For Punisher, I don't really run it myself, but I've heard Blades running it, with their old variants for their boss kills, and that seems to be something that Blade can use. But at least on the punny side, we don't really run it because we have better options that we can kind of pick from. And then on the depending on how you want to build it, at least on Thor's side, Thor, they kind of go back and forth between their critical precision. But at the end of the day, I hear a lot more Thors wanting to run critical. But at least on the punny side, I probably shouldn't say always, but at least with the current information that I have now, both precision and critical are both viable builds as long as you have the pieces for them. For about, I want to say like 70% of the time that I've been running this game mode, I've only been having pieces that have been more lenient on the critical side, but I have had rank 1 PBs with precision builds in my earlier blood hunt attempts on the solo side. So run, whatever pieces that you can get, but generally, try to aim for like at least above 60% on your critical rate. I like to aim for like 3.6, for the critical damage. The more the barrier, or the more the barrier, better. But with gear enhancements and swapping out skills, I mean, we're going to be able to push the limits on this. So, the higher the crit rate, the higher the crit damage, the better, or vice versa for precision. And then on the survival side for Punisher, meta kind of changes for survival on the punny sides. I see myself flipping back and forth between adding armor and adding health, or just going strictly damage. It just kind of, at the end of the day, comes down to personal preference. On the the most current PB that I've got recently, I took all the armor out just because that was the playstyle that I was liking. But I've ran with both variations of, gosh, having armor, having health, and sacrificing certain things on the trait tree to be able to get that. But if you're running like total damage with no armor variation, at least for this specific build here, that is the new PB, it's only going to have 69% armor with 11k health, and that's with the max health value, or almost max. We have 9% here, but with a max armor value here. So 69% is what you're going to be expecting, and about 12k for your health is what you should be expecting there too, on the bare minimum that you want to be able to achieve. And then what I normally like having is healing rune charge slots. At the end of the day, you're going to die as Punisher. There's just no way around it. You're going to use coins. You're going to die. So you will just want to have the most charge slots that you can, just to be able to stay up as long as possible in between those deaths. And just, it will all depend if you want to run solo or quads. For solo, you want to get your health restored, or some type of other defense stat just on your own flavor, essentially. But if you run quads, I mean, I would probably run something else other than health restored, because a lot of the time you're not doing mob clear, so it's not going to help you out any. So run charge slots and then just whatever else that you can get. Maybe like dodge or block or whatever else that we can roll in there. But generally the more, or the 4 basic things that we're going to want is health, armor, health, and heal rune charge slots, and then just whatever health or defensive stats that you want kind of going forward. But on the trait side here, variations that I've ran is having 5 points out of 5 for the armor here. That feels to be about the breaking point to where we start hitting like 73%, and then we start having diminishing values on hitting the armor or the other armor stack here. So if you want to run like an armor variation, running 5 out of 5 on your armor can work. Running 5 out of 5 on your percentage health can work. Or running, like, say, if you want to go like super tank, you could run, say, like 1 or 2 full stacks of armor, and then maybe like a couple points in the percentage health, and that will really bump you up to, say, 13k health with 73% armor reduction, with what I think up to like 75%, or gosh, maybe even higher. But that's at least what I normally kind of do on the variations on the armor side. It's just kind of personal preference at the end of the day. But normally, if you're going to be taking points out, if you're doing quads, you won't have any points in the high energy stuff, so that's already quite a bit there. If you're running solo, then you'll take a couple points out of your chain reaction. Depending on if you're running, say, like close range variant or not, you can take points out of target rich, even though it's quite a bit of damage loss there. But if you have high enough damage to where it doesn't matter, then you can take it off of there. You can take some points off of your piercing shot, as long as you have the 1 point to keep it triggered. That's all the really that you need there. And then if you want to go into the real nitty gritty, then you can take points off of chain fire, and you can take points off of rhythm of rune. With the most recent info that I have as of today, I don't run rhythm of rune anymore, depending on the amount of chain fire that you have. So I know we're getting more into the kind of gear and traits at that point, and we'll cover on that in the next section. But just the TLDR, at a certain point of chain fire, you're not really getting those extra bullets anymore if you have that last trait enabled. And the old number that we were working with was +7 if you have it enabled, and that's with I think it's the 3 points in your trait as well. But with a little bit more testing that I was able to do today before making this video, I have completely taken that trait off. I have a max chain fire of 10, and at least from what I've gotten with the new PB, it feels like I'm doing more damage, and that it's registering all those chain fire shots, as previously chain fire was bugged, and you had to unequip and re-equip your slug, and it was just a whole hassle. But we'll touch upon the bug section on Punny as well too, to kind of go more into that. But that's generally what you're going to be looking for in your damage stats and your survival stats. And on the next section here, we'll touch up on the specials and the traits. Now that we've kind of covered the basic stats on what to kind of expect and kind of how to gauge what we want on them, we'll start heading over to the trait section here. When you're building pretty much any character in Blood Hunt, you're gonna have the basic things of maxing your totals, of total damage, total output, picking whatever variation that you want of either crit damage or precision, having whatever keystones that you want between all of your picks, and then possibly your final there as well. That's generally what you're going to be doing on the left side on your purples here. But generally, when you start off on traits across all characters, you want to build up all of your specials first, and then fill in the rest with all the purples after that. And on the Punisher side, depending on what you want to build, you can either build the AR or the shotgun variants. For at least explaining this portion, we're just going to be covering the shotgun, and then we'll move on to the AR after that. But starting off with the shotgun, the first thing to kind of come up with is the chain fire. On chain fire, I know in Rivals there's going to be a lot of wording here that it's going to be saying that it's doing one thing, but in typical Marvel's fashion, there's a lot of things that are either just not working right, or the wording is incorrect, or there's going to be bugs that will just change things, and that's where a lot of the testing kind of comes in. It'll say one thing, but with testing it just kind of shows something else. So with chain fire, it's going to be the additional shots for your shotgun build. Every point in your traits here, it will bump it up by 1. You can kind of show it off here. So 1, you'll gain 1, 2, you'll gain another 1, 3, you'll gain another 1. And on previous runs with Punisher, it felt like a lot of the time there was the chain fire bug on mainly because most of the time you'll get chain fire on your slug. And with original testing, the chain fire would bug out and it just wouldn't register the damage, so we would have to unequip and re-equip the slug to make it work. But with newer testing that I've been doing today, we've been finding out that the rhythm of rune, each shot from Deliverance reduces the interval of the next shot by 0.04 seconds, stacks up to 5 times, is affecting the chain fire, and kind of what it feels like it's doing is kind of cutting it off before it can complete all of its shots. And from what we've kind of tested, it felt like the sweet spot was having +7 on your chain fire enhancement, and then having your 3 on your traits with the bottom trait ticked. And that felt like the sweet spot to where, say, at least on the Nightmare 200 runs, there would be a lot of rolls that you would get that would be lower on the chain fire, but then higher on your other stats, say like in your critical damage or hail, or in this example would be boss. Previously we'd run like, say, +7 on the chain fire, maybe lower, and then having the higher stats on those. But with the addition of Nightmare 300 and being able to roll higher stats or even newer stats, the new info that we have now that we can start rolling with forward is, if you're going to max chain fire, which you're probably going to do with the enhancements, you're going to want to start taking off Rhythm of Rune, because it's just going to be cutting off that damage, and just try to get at least an S rank for your chain fire moving forward. If you're trying to min max with this on, go ahead and tick this, have like +7 on your chain for whatever reason, say like you don't have enough to upgrade her at that point, you can try running that variation. But moving forward, if you have all the resources that you need and stuff, have this off, and have your 3 in your chain fire. And then on the next part here is ammo reserve. The longer that we can keep shooting, the better, because the normal downtime between reloads is about a second or 2, and we're shooting for X amount of time, depending if it's AR or shotgun. Shotgun, be like 40, 60 seconds depending on the traits that you pick, whereas AR you'll be shooting for like 10 seconds, so the reload can affect you quite a bit. So having max ammo on AR or shotgun is just going to be viable. You don't want to waste a trait of getting even more ammo just because you know you're going to want damage at that point, but at least having 3 points in trait is going to be good enough. Hail of bullets, this is where people have been getting confused. It says deliverance ammo capacity, and a lot of people were just thinking that it's just another variation of just having more bullets, or that you're just having more ammo capacity, or that you're just shooting more bullets. But what it comes down to is that hell of bullets is going to be pretty much the pellets that are coming out of each bullet. So you have the bullet that's coming out from chain fire, and then the bolt or the pellets that are coming from the hail of bullets, essentially. And with testing, it feels like hail of bullets is going to be the best bang for your buck out of everything that we've tested. You know, Nightmare 300 might prove to where meta will change, and meta's always changing every day, at least on the Punisher side, just from the things that I've tested. But with info that I have currently, hail of bullets is just going to be the biggest bang for your buck. So having 2 stacks minimum of hail, 3 if you can, is going to be the best that you can possibly do. And then having 3 points in your trait here for your special. And then vacuum trajectory moves damage fall off over distance for deliverance. You always want to have that checked because you never want your damage falling off. Piercing shot, we can leave this at 1 if you have piercing shot on your slug or wherever else. But say if you don't and you're running like a different variation of the, I think it's like chain explosion or something, then you'll want to have at least, let's get back up to it. If you don't have a piercing shot trait on one of your pieces of equipment, run 3. But if you do have piercing shot on your equipment, only run 1 so that we can use those points elsewhere. For target rich environment, it's kind of dealer's choice. Personally, if you want more damage, that max 60% is going to help you out. But if you feel like you can sacrifice something, then this will be one of the options to consider if you want a little bit more, say, armor on your build. Personally, for a max damage, I run it. But if you want an armor variation build, take that off. For brute force knockback, it'll knock back the enemies, so it might save you a little bit. But overall, because you're pushing them away and kind of spreading out the groups, it's a net loss on your damage, so we don't run that if we're trying to maximize damage. For solo runs, personally I like running the maximum amount of damage that I can. At least that's what the newest PB that I got has. So you can run different variations. What I run on the PB is 3 points on your chain reaction, 3 points in your high energy. But if you want to min-max, you can take 2 points off your chain reaction and use those points elsewhere. And that'll be about the biggest variation that you can do. But you always want to have the highest possible high energy that you can, because that's going to be the way that you do or deal with your mob clear. You have to have high energy or chain reaction, essentially one of the two, both if you can. Like say chain reaction on one of your traits and high energy on one of your traits. But at the end of the day, you're always going to need high energy for solo runs. But if you're doing quads or say group play, then you want to have nothing in high energy or chain reaction. And then the last little bit here, Rhythm of Rune. This has been the newest info that I've gotten today. But generally we had that ticked and we just ran with the lower variant of Chainfire with newer info. I don't run this right now because I'm trying to max Chainfire and it just feels like it's cutting it off. Who knows, maybe I'll get more updated data down the line, but that's the current info that I have right now. And then that'll be all of the building on the shotgun side, but if you want to run an AR variant, we can go over those as well too. So on the multi-trajectory, firing pretty much 2 horizontal bullet on your trajectory, you want to max that out as much as possible. The more multi-trajectory that you have, the better. Normally having like 2 to 3 stacks is recommended. That's pretty much the equivalent of hail of bullets essentially. And you just want to get as much as possible for that. For the extended magazine, same thing like with your shotgun variant. You want to have that up as much as possible because the downtime on AR is going to be more significant compared to shotgun. And then on high speed rifling, max that out. It's self-explanatory of each shot from your rifle increases the fire rate by 2%, max 25. And then, you know, it'll scale up with more, but you know, with all of our testing, having that as high as possible with 3 points, S rank on your trait for your gear is going to be recommended. For vacuum trajectory, removes damage fall off over distance for your rifle. Go ahead and take that. You'll never want to get rid of that. Unless, let me correct myself. The one build that we have been playing around with, but we haven't gotten to work just yet because we haven't had the pieces, is the pressure washer build for the AR. So it's more theory crafting, if anything. That'll need more testing. But the variation is having no auto headshot on your AR with close range damage, and then, you know, taking off anything that deals with long range, like say I believe it's your fatal pursuit here, and then taking off vacuum trajectory, so you can run essentially a close range power washer version of shotgun AR version essentially, but that'll need more testing to do. But overall, with most AR variants right now, have that ticked. Fatal pursuit, same thing. All the AR variants right now run fatal pursuit. You want to have this maxed out with an S rank on your gear, and that's what you want to run, just because it's a lot of damage increase the more distance you get. And at least with fatal pursuit, it feels like the damage doesn't increase after your auto headshot falls off, so that's just kind of the sweet spot that you want to get there, and that's kind of what you want to run with on your fatal pursuit. For shrapnel shot, that's kind of up in the air and personal preference, but what it comes down to is it feels like shrapnel shot will deal more damage to, say, like mobs and elites and stuff, but it doesn't feel like it's doing... It feels like we have better choices for boss damage. Personally, I like running it because a lot of the time if you're running AR, you're running AR in a farming scenario that you want to make sure that you can secure the boss without a squirrel girl, at least on the Nightmare 200 right now. So with shotgun, a lot of the variation you know, things can change because we'll be able to swap out things, but at least with current testing, AR outshines shotgun if you don't have squirrel girl and can maintain consistency in farming. But if you want the best bang for your buck on solo runs or boss dealing damage, you want to go shotgun essentially. AR, you know, it can melt one single target, so if you're just focusing on one single boss, that's fine. And you know, it'll carry at the end of the day, where shotgun you need a little bit more setup with your group. But if you do have the squirrel girl vuln and you know your tank set up with another proper boss dealer, it's just going to outshine on the shotgun because you group both bosses together and you can melt them both simultaneously, whereas AR you can only stick with the one boss. Maybe the power washer variant will do something different, but we just haven't been able to test it fully yet. So at least for now, I like running shrapnel, but you can try toying with that and taking points off if you want with the high energy shrapnel as well. To kind of explain it, instead of just saying, you know, what you should pick and not, the shrapnel shot will branch out if you do either body shots or headshots, you know, depending on how many points that you have into it. So it feels like in theory we can start adding shrapnel shot to the builds, and maybe down the line it can do more on the mob clear, maybe on the solo attempts. But overall, at the end of the day, a lot of the time you're just going to run it for group farms, and you want to be able to secure elite kills and your boss kill. So do as you will with that. I personally run it, but you can take points off of it if you want. In the zone, if you want to experiment, take it off. But you know, most of the time in most builds, you want to run this on 3 full stacks. It'll have the 9-second full duration, and I believe it cuts it down to like 60 or 40 headshots when you fully upgrade it. And then for the heavy caliber, Sometimes I like to maybe put 1 point in there if I have something extra, but normally I don't really run it. At least on, keyboard and mouse. As long as you hit your shots, it's not really going to matter because the spray of the AR is just going to be hitting anything anyways. I've seen arguments made for, if you're on console, maybe it'll help out with your shots a bit better, but that'd be about the only reason why I would run that. And then pinpoint accuracy, bullets have a 20% chance to knock back enemies. It's just the same thing as with the knockback on the shotgun. You're just losing damage whenever you select that. It just pushes enemies away, and you're pretty much wasting that point where you can be putting it elsewhere. So I don't ever really run that. And then that's kind of what I'm thinking about when I'm selecting the traits. Essentially, you can move points around here and there, but as long as you understand the fundamentals of these traits, then you can kind of start building as you want with your Punisher builds now. Now that we understand our stats and our traits and everything else for the Punisher side, now we can start going into the gear and start what to look out for, especially for these 300 runs with switching out your specials, the gear drops that we get in general. You just, we want to figure out what exactly to look out for, and this is kind of the general things that you can kind of play with. So starting on Slug, you're going to have the biggest variations around here. At least most of the time, starting from top to bottom, you can either go on your first one, either output, boss, or close range damage, and any one of those three will normally work. You just kind of play with what you want on that top one there, but normally any one of those are going to work. Most of the time, if you have a character that can utilize boss damage, that's going to be better than, output. And close range will incorporate mob kill and elite kill, along with, boss kill as well. So it's just kind of dealer's choice on what you pick on that top one. And then the following one, you want either crit damage or crit rate. The better one's going to be crit damage because it scales better over than, say just crit rate. And that'll be what you want to roll for your second one. For the third one on Slug, hail of bullets, you're never really ever going to change that. Just always go for the max hail of bullets that you can. For the fourth one on Slug, this is where variations can start. For the current PB that I have, I've ran piercing shot, and with that, it just makes it easier to be able to deal with a lot of enemies at one time, or say when bosses are split up before they group up on the initial first seconds of boss wave. And that's where the piercing shot just kind of shines. So with every point that we have, it increases it by a meter, and I'll just be going through all the enemies that you're either having on ground level and trying to shoot through, or if you say you're doing like the hopping technique in your solo runs, you're kind of aiming down at their heads, and it'll kind of pierce through their heads and kind of hit like the multiple of the enemies that way. And a variation that you can run, we'll pull it up here, is, I believe it's chain reaction enhancement. So we can see here, we'll pull up one that I use on occasion. So here's one that I use on, or that one had healthy. So many pieces. We can at least show this one. So on this variation, we can see that we have total output, critical damage, hail of bullets, and then this one has the chain reaction enhancement. Normally you only run this in solo attempts, and this will give you a little bit extra bang for the explosions on your mob waves between waves 1 and 4. And what it normally comes down to is you start with chain fire. That's your base amount of bullets. You then apply the hail of bullets on top of that to be able to add your pellets. And then from there, you need some type of wave clear, whether it's the, what do we have on our weapon here? The high energy explosive, or with the exclusives that we were just looking at, the chain reaction to deal with the mob clear. And then it feels like you need at least 2 levels of mob clear. So whether it's like the high energy explosive with chain reaction, 2 high energy explosives, maybe a high energy explosive with close range, just any type of these variants, you need at least multiple layers of dealing with mobs so that way you can kill them quick enough, at least on the solo attempts. So if you want at least a little bit more bang on the mob clear, you can run chain reaction. If you want, say, something more universal to where you can run more with groups, I personally prefer piercing shot because you can still deal with the elite waves on wave clear, and it will help with the the first 5 seconds of the, say, like your boss wave when they're initially split up. You can still hit both of them as long as your line of sight is good between both bosses. And then on our last thing here, most of the time I like running chain fire enhancement. More bullets the better, but other variations you can run is with the high energy explosive. And if you're running at least double high energy explosive, you would run high energy explosive on your slug and then your weapon. What you would need to do at that point is put chain fire on your weapon to make up for the lack of bullets that you don't have in your slug. And then that's going to be your biggest variation if you want to run something different that isn't chain fire. But really, that's only going to help you with your solo attempts as Punisher. But the tried and true method is going to be your chain fire enhancement. That's really never, bugs aside, that's been my go-to. Going on to the amulet, there's a couple different things that we can kind of run with here. The number one thing that you always want to go for is hail of bullets on your amulet. That's just the biggest bang for your buck. Followed by both crit rate and crit damage. And then the last two, I would probably say total damage for one of them. And then maybe for your last one, it's kind of up to the dealer's choice on the last two. But what it overall comes down to is you'd either want like total damage, total output, close range damage, or boss damage. So any one of those four, if you make it into the right combination, is going to be the four that you want to pick for on the last two. What I would probably look out for, or what I would switch to, is total damage going forward, and then maybe say like total output if I only have one total output on my weapon, and say none of my exclusive, or maybe boss damage could be a potential as well too. Another variation is the close range as well too. I know I personally like running close range nowadays. It just helps me out quite a bit. But say if you don't like running close range, you can take that out and try running one of the different variants as well too. And that's what you would want to look for on your amulet. And then on your shotgun, this is where builds can kind of vary quite a bit, because at the end of the day, you want total damage, you want both of your crit rate, crit damage, but then things will kind of change at that point. If you're, say, at least for my PB build here, I have total output and I have the S rank and high energy, which is, I pretty much recommend S rank at that point if you're doing solo runs. But if you're switching out of solo runs, you can take out the high energy and put hail of bullets there. And then you could say take out output and maybe put like boss damage or close range, or it just all depends on the gear pieces that you have, and just building on the limitations that you currently have. Like say if you have close range on your exclusive, then you're going to want to say put boss damage on your amulet, and then maybe have like hail of bullets on like output or something on your weapon. And it just really just comes down on the pieces that you have. But as long as you generally know what to look for on the best stats to kind of look for, you can kind of build off of it. The total damage, total output, or your main staples, followed by your crit rate, crit damage, at least for my build, precision if you want to do that variant, and then high energy for your solo, or swap it out for hail of bullets on your squad play, and then maybe add something else along those lines. You could switch out output, or it all depends on the pieces that you have. And then for your armor, You want both health values, you want your armor value, you want your healing rune charge slot, and then for solo, health restored upon defeating enemy. If it's not solo, just whatever you want at that point, essentially. But you could probably run like dodge or maybe more block, or I don't know, just kind of your choice at that point. But maybe meta will change and then we'll actually have something more stable. But we'll kind of see at that point. But that's pretty much what you want to look for in your gear side on your shotgun punny. But if we do go into the AR variant, we'll pull up what we'll do for that. So starting on your barrel here for your AR variant, on the top stat, you'd probably want to do either output or boss damage, since close range is not really going to work for the AR variant. The second one, you know, same thing applies, crit damage, or the crit rate, as we were talking about earlier, crit damage is better. And then followed by, you're going to want high speed for your third one, multi-trajectory for your fourth one, and then fatal pursuit for your fifth one. I've tried different variations, and it just always comes down to this, and it's never really let me down at this point, and I've always ran with that. For the accessory here, I run multi-trajectory, both my totals, and then both my criticals, and that's been the best that's been working for me in the AR variant. And then if you want to switch out something, maybe boss for output, but it just at the end of the day, it just all depends on your gear. And for weapon, we have the total output with multi-trajectory, both criticals and boss damage, because you need at least, 1 or 2 stacks of boss at the end of the day. And this has been the weapon that's been kind of going with me. But as we've been saying before, you can swap things out with, say, total damage, and that'll also work. And you'll have to play around with it. There's a lot of different builds that will work, and just all comes down to what gear that you're gonna have. So, but that'll be what you would kind of look out for in the AR side of the gear. Another point that I do want to touch upon for Punisher side specifically is the cards for Punisher. I know a lot of the time it doesn't feel like it's really doing a whole lot, but I promise you that cards are mandatory for the top runs, so we'll be kind of going over them. Knowing the fundamentals of Punisher will kind of decide what you pick during your runs, but typically what it comes down to is if you want damage cards, or if you want more damage, go damage cards. If you want more defense, go defense. Typically, if I'm running no armor, all damage variants, I will run at least 1 stack of chain 5 or gain 5% damage reduction to beef up the survivability a little bit when I'm tanking bosses for group play, or mob clearing on the solo play. And for the damage cards, well, I guess on the defense cards as well, sometimes I'll grab health bonus as well, or if it's just you don't have any other choices, maybe some of the other stuff. But typically damage reduction first, followed by health bonus. But most of the time I'm going for the damage cards. And typically, lethal strike 10% total damage bonus is just overall a generally good card if you just want to do damage to everything. On, say, solo runs, if you don't have enough mob clear, a lot of the time I'll go chain lightning on the first round. Sometimes I'll go deep freeze if I have no other choice, but really I'm only picking one of those for a little bit more mob clear if I'm lacking. And if I want to go more, say, universal damage, I'll normally pick up close quarters, because that'll do 20% damage both to the mobs and a boss, is kind of my number 1 pick nowadays, followed by boss hunter for 20% boss damage as well. And on a last ditch effort, maybe healthy on enemies if I'm doing solo runs or something. But a lot of time I'll just be picking up defense or something instead of the healthy, and then never the ultimate ability, because the ultimate has never really worked well for Punisher at all levels of 120, 160, 200, and I just don't see it changing for 300. So we never pick that, hardly ever pick healthy. And that's kind of the card priority for Punisher on what I normally do. Now that you've got everything going, you've got your traits going, you've got your gear set, now you just need to start having the little bits more info to be able to place on your rank 1 runs. There's going to be priority mobs that you look out for the rank 1 times, and it's going to cut out quite, or it's going to either cut out or add time significantly on the types of mobs that you have. The top mobs to look out for are going to be the bombers, the mobs that explode on you, the runners, the kind of medium-sized dude, they glow red and they charge at you. Those are going to be the 2 quickest mobs that will cut off the most amount of time. And then followed by that, I would probably say crawlers. Is you'll lose a bit of time with crawlers, but it's at least still runnable if you get them. The worst mobs that you can possibly get are going to be flyers and sorcerers, or just any of the magic users essentially. Those will just drain your time. What it comes down to, even if you have max damage on Thor, the respawn time that it takes for them to come out, it just takes too long at the end of the day, even with max range, max damage Thor. And just, yeah, the time that you cut from the mobs as well will also affect it. So end of the day, those are going to be the 3 mobs to look out for, and then the mobs to also look out for. And when it comes to your bossing, or I guess we should touch on elites, for shotgun and AR, they're both going to be viable against elites. So the flyer elites are probably going to be the most pain. They're the highest threat to you that are going to be able to kill you. So if you can take them out, great. And the charger elites are also going to be a pain, because they can knock you up and cut out quite a bit of your damage over time. If they knock you up and you kind of lose sight of your enemies for that second, you'll just take a damage loss. So at least on the solo run attempts, you're going to want to focus on your main mobs, and you're going to want to circle around them, and you just want to keep bunching them up into a circle using your right click, or whatever the controller equivalent is, popping your smoke screen in the middle of the mob. So what I like doing is I gather them up into a circle. I'll start hopping into the center of the mob. I'll pop the smoke right into the center of the mob. It'll push me back right outside of the group, and then I'll maintain rotation while focusing as much pressure in the center as possible to be able to trigger the explosion. And once you're doing that, waves 1, wave 2 on occasion will have some elites, but normally waves 1 and 2 just be kind of normally doing that. But on the higher waves of, say, like sometimes on 2 up to wave 4, you'll be spawning your elites, and you'll focus on mobs until the elites become a problem, or they'll start threatening your damage over time, or they threaten to kill you. That's when you start targeting them, because at that point they take off a couple seconds from your survival times. Because when you're running, at least on the top ranks and quads at least, you want to go for survival, because you can cut off more time than you can by killing enemies quicker. So the time trials are going to be the quickest. So looking out for the specific mobs and grouping them, and then at least for the elites, if they get close to you, you can cut off a couple seconds by changing targets and focus back on mobs afterwards. And then that'll be the general thought process on your mobs between waves 1 and 4. And then for your boss, it'll all depend if you're running shotgun or AR. If you're running shotgun, Rat does feel quite a bit of a pain still, because of her AoE ground attack, or the red puddles that she can pop down, along with her targetable attack when she pops up in the air. It just makes the rat fight kind of more of a nuisance. If you can group them up, they do have potentially the second fast boss time, but I guess on boss ranking priority, you either want Kingpin, like double Kingpin if you can. One Kingpin variation works too. And then with maybe one rat, 2 rats just kind of feels like too much, but if you have 1 rat, that's doable. And the slowest bosses that you can get, if you have any type of cap that's going to slow your shotgun down time significantly, and with just how Drac fights are, most of the time you're just there's a rare occasion that you can melt Drac quick, but it's just too rare for it to happen. So a lot of the time, Cap and Drac are just going to be too much of time wasters, and you want to look for Kingpin rat variations. And that'll be for your shotgun. For AR, you're going to want more head targets. So Kingpin, Captain are going to be the better ones for you. Because what happens with, say, rat fight, if you're having a Squirrel Girl tank for you, if you have a Blade tank for you, the rat is not looking towards you, so you're not hitting your headshots with your AR, and you're not triggering your auto headshot, so you're losing a lot of damage over time. So whereas the heads of Kingpin and Cap are showing a lot more of the time, and those bosses are going to be better for AR, whereas shotgun will be a little bit different. And that'll be the kind of the mob priority that you're looking out for. And then for your grouping on your solo runs, you'll want to group them into a circle. And so when the round starts, at least on wave 1, I will, at least without the bottom trait now, I can sustain fire pretty much throughout the entire round now. So I'll start right when the wave starts going, even if I have close range damage. And then when all the spawns kind of converge together, that's when I start doing the circle around all of the mobs. And then whenever there's enough there, I'll pop smoke into the center while jumping into the center. I pop smoke into the center, and then that'll push me out to where I can hop back outside of the group again. And I can burn or trigger multiple explosions at that point. It's going to be your solo game loop. To whereas with group play, it's most likely going to be Thor clearing out all the mobs for you. You're going to be clearing out the elites. Squirrel Girl is going to be applying the vuln to where you can both do that. But at that point, you'll have either, say, a second Thor, or we'll really see on the Nightmare 300s, but most of the time you'll probably have like a second boss killer, or at least the rank 1 times. And yeah, we'll kind of be going from there, but that's generally what to kind of expect for that. So for this guide, that'll be everything that we'll be covering on the Punisher side. I know the guide has been a little bit long, so thank you all for sticking it out. If you do want future content on, say, how to handle Drac on the max difficulty, or how to set up for boss fights, how to set up with Tank Squirrel Girl, how to set up Phone Squirrel Girl, feel free to know. Drop, comment, tell me what you all want to see next, and we can start making some more videos for y'all out there. But hopefully this at least explains, all the fundamentals on what I look for on the base stats and all the special stats for Punisher, and my thinking process on how to build the Punisher. And in the description, I'll have a couple links on the different builds and variations that I run with Punisher, and everything else that I can possibly think of that will help you all out. But at least for now, we'll wrap it up here. So thanks for everyone for watching the video. Feel free to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment if you have any input or questions, and I'll see you all later.